So this project is replacing the rear strut and shock absorber and a spring on a BMW F10. Mine I'm doing because I get some nasty noise on any kind of bumps or even sharper turns. So I'm guessing maybe the shock absorber is making that noise. I think I've isolated it to the right rear wheel, so it has to be replaced. And left rear side has a broken spring. Okay, so what I did was I'm actually doing this on the cheap. So what I did was I ended up buying one used strut assembly, and I'm gonna take out a spring for one side, for left side, and a shock absorber for the right side. So I'm gonna fix both sides from one part. So it came in a box like this from eBay. And I'm gonna tackle that job now. First of all, you have to get inside to the back seat, and using a tool like this, you have to pry up this speaker cover. So I just did that. Obviously, try not to break anything. There's the speaker right here. So next, I'm gonna get some kind of small Allen and remove this speaker here. 3 bolts, and that should give me access. Then I believe I have to disconnect the speaker, and that should give me access to the strut mounts, bolts, 3 bolts that are holding it in place. So I'm gonna try to loosen them first. So to get more space to undo the speaker, I'm gonna lift up, press the button here, and take out the headrest. I guess you can do it without unfolding the seat first. So I have to unfold the seat from the trunk. So get into your trunk and pull on this guy, and this will pop the seat right here. And now I should be able to, there we go, do this. Something like that, there we go, now it's out. Okay. And now it looks like it's Torx 25. T25 here, so I'm gonna do all 3 of these. Okay, they went really easily, no pressure on them, no torque at all. So I'm lifting up the speaker for the first time, and the instructions say you have to disconnect the speaker, and that should hopefully give us access to something in here. Turns out I didn't need to disconnect the speaker, and actually I couldn't, to be honest with you. So then I lifted up so I just pushed it to the side. Then I looked inside here for the mounts, and I couldn't find them, but looks like there's a little foam protection here. And check this out. There's your strut here. I was able to get to one of the bolts with my deep socket 13, deep socket 13 right here, and it looks like it's going. Okay, so I loosen them up, times 3, deep socket 13, and just like everything on these damn cars, space is your main enemy here. So to access that one, guess what I had to do? BMW was kind enough to give us a cutout here, but I had to put my deep socket in first, deep socket onto the nut first, and then go from the top here and connect my extension with the deep socket, and looks like it's going. Okay, so shouldn't be a problem at this point. I have them loose already. So looks like at this point where I have them all loose, 1, 2, and 3, the actual mounts, I have to go take my wheel off and go down there and continue down there. So it just took me 20 minutes to remove to loosen up the that. You can actually see it there. There you go. See the 21 impact socket there? So there's your strut shock absorber. Took me 20 minutes because obviously freaking space is always an issue. So this is what I end up doing. As you can see, sort of long extension there, long extension, and obviously there's no place to put your impact gun which I thought would be required. Thank God it wasn't, and I was able to break it with a breaker bar. So breaker bar, 1/2 inch couple extension, long extension, about a 1 foot extension, and I was able to break it, to loosen it. Look, I'm so happy. Should be good now. Should be pretty simple after that, I hope. Okay, so I got it loose, as I just showed you. And here's what it looks like. I hope that was what was making the noise, just kinda the age of it. I don't know, it's not that old, only 8 years. Anyhow, now back to the inside of the car, and I'm gonna continue. The instructions say continue to remove those 3 nuts and then pull the strut downwards. Undo the final bolt down there and pull it out. So let's see how it goes. Okay, removing the 3 nuts that are holding the strut. There goes one of them. I don't want to lose it. I don't know if there's any holes there to lose it, so I'm being really careful here. Hope I'm being careful enough. Okay, there's one. So by the way, this is what I was talking about. There's a hole here. So that hole allows you to then connect with your socket. I have a socket there. See, there you go. There you go, get in there. There you go, like that. Okay, so looks like the last couple strokes. Oops. The last couple strokes looks like I can do by hand, and I have a feeling it should be coming out very soon. There we go. That's it. Wow, that's a big ass. Wow. The manual says you should get a new one, by the way. So now I should be able to loosen up the strut and somehow get it out. The manual says downwards, so I don't know if I can do this without lifting the car much higher. Downwards and to the rear, I think it said. Oh, there you go. Okay, so it went. It actually hit me a little bit because the wheel wanted to go up. But here we go, it's coming up. Okay, so it wasn't going when I was trying to clear it through here. So I had to have my daughter stand on the wheel, push it down very hard, grab with her arms right here, push it down like that, all the way down, and then I was able to clear it here. I was able to clear it through here, right above the brake line. Okay, and it's out. New one is gonna go. So there's an old one and there's a new one. Okay. So I've always thought that left and right were the same. So I bought one from eBay. It's on the right, it's the new one, but it looks like the top mounting plate, as you can see, has different positioning of the bolts. So I'm in a bit of a trouble here, but I was anticipating something like that on my other side, because my other side has a broken spring actually, so I need to salvage the spring from mine right here. So it looks like I'm gonna have to use these things. I think still they're the same. It's just that I have to compress the springs and most likely adjust all of these bottom and top mounts here, turn them. So probably, I don't know how that's gonna work. I hope that as soon as I compress the springs with the spring compressor, which I rented, it will allow me to turn this guy to that position, and then this top mounting plate to that position. Because as you can see, they're different right now. The bolts are in a different place, so it's not gonna fit. Już! Nice. So I have the spring compressed. This is actually a broken spring, but if you can see, I can move it back and forth. I can't see it really well. But what I really wanted to show you is how I ended up loosening this nut here. There's an Allen inside, and you have to lock it because otherwise it's gonna spin. So the Allen inside is gonna spin. The main carrier bolt is gonna spin when you try to take off the nut. So I used a shallow socket, and then I put the Allen key inside like that. I can't really show you with one hand. And then I grabbed the socket with pliers, and I was able to then turn right. Make sure you turn the Allen key right, so the socket is coming on left. And I'm almost done. So I'm gonna take off the little plate here. So what I'm doing now is I'm moving a coil spring that's good on the left to the shock absorber on the right. So what I'm actually doing is I'm aligning, I'm figuring it out where the bottom plate here, how the bottom plate has to be positioned, this little guy here, left or right, to match with the positioning of the spring here, because if you don't match it identically, then the top plate will be different, the angle will be different, and right here, and of course the bolts will be in different locations, so it's not going to clear your behind the seat mounting area there. So I've marked a couple scratches here, one scratch here for that, and then tried to replicate it here. I'm just eyeing it. I don't know if there's any scientific way of doing it, but the spring should allow for some movement later, I think, of these rubber stops, rubber plates. So so I don't think it has to be down to a millimeter. So we'll give it a shot. So I'm going to be compressing this spring now and moving it onto that shock absorber on the right. So here's the strut with the spring compressed. I don't want to even touch it, but you can see the spring is not touching the top plate anymore right there. So it's compressed quite a bit, as you can see here in the center. So again, next thing is to get the Allen key. Get the Allen key here. And the socket. Socket's gonna go here. Oops, why is it not staying? Socket is gonna go here, like that. Allen key is gonna go here, and I'm gonna grab the socket with these pliers. So grab the socket, hold it, and then I'm gonna turn the Allen key right, and that should loosen the nut here, and allow me to take the top plate off. And when the top plate comes off, the spring comes off, and then the spring can be put under the shock absorber there, which I believe is better. Okay, so this worked just fine. Again, not too much pressure on it. Okay, the nut was, the socket was here, right, and the Allen wrench was right through it, and I was able to turn it right quite easily. Okay, so I took the nut off. I wish I could show it to you with a second camera in, but anyhow, Then that makes this top plate possible for removal, and I should be able to move the spring now. I really want to use 2 hands for this because the spring is sitting tightly in there, but I should be able to remove it and simply put that spring onto that shock absorber next. So here, as you can see, I'm trying to insert the strut into the opening. You really have to wiggle it back and forth and turn it left and right and whatever to kind of fight with it and get it up there. When you think you've reached the top, so when you only have about maybe around 2 inches lack of clearance, you're gonna have somebody heavy like this. You see here my son, he's gonna stand on the rotor and he's gonna be jumping on it to give you as much clearance as you can get. And as you can see, the brake line is in the way, so be careful not to break or damage your brake line. Don't force it too much. You just have to force the rotor down. So jumping on it, getting somebody really heavy are 2 good ideas. Or if you have a next car standing, that's what worked for me. If you have a second car standing right next to your car, then push your body against that second car and exert a lot more pressure on your rotor. And there you go. As you can see, it just went. There you have it. Again, inspect it, make sure your brake line is fine. 2 people are useful for this part as well. Have one person lift up, that I did that in my case because it's quite heavy. Lift up the strut as much as you can and have one person at the top feel if the bolts are going through the holes in the top location, their top mount. So so push the strut upwards as much as you can, wiggle back and forth left and right until the person catches, and as soon as that's done, either have them put a nut on one of the bolts so the strut doesn't fall down, or you have them hold it in position from the bottom and you go into the car and put at least 2 nuts on the bolts through this opening. And finally, the hardest part. So have somebody, again, I don't have that on the video here, but have somebody really heavy stand on your rotor, okay, and really jump on it and to bring it as low as you can. And at the same time, you should grab really hard and attempt to push the bottom of this strut, bottom of your shock absorber, into the opening. It has to go in perfectly. You will actually feel it kind of snap into position very nicely, and at this point you can insert your spring. I'm still having my son jump up and down just in case my positioning wasn't perfect, so it would allow the bottom of the shock absorber to correct itself, if you will. So now that the strut is attached at the bottom here to the knuckle, as you can see, I got my deep socket there and extensions going out there above the exhaust pipe, and I was tightening it from the underside of the car. Obviously, it was just easier with just a regular ratchet here. Okay, so you see my extensions. I'm gonna tighten up later the 3 mounts at the top, but you gotta also torque it right. So I believe the torque is 120 foot-pounds. So this is kind of what it looks like from the bottom. I was tightening it up from here with a regular ratchet extension, socket 21. There's the there you can see it there. Okay, so finally I have to put the I have to put the torque wrench on and tighten it up to 120 foot-pounds. And then I'll tighten up the 3 screws at the 3 bolts at the top with size 13, I believe, 13 millimeters. Depending on how you have your lift set up, your jacks, you may have to lift up the car for this, because my extension, my torque wrench is pretty long, so as you can see, there's not even space here. My car isn't high enough. It's hitting the floor, if hitting the driveway, so I may have to lift up the car again to use the torque wrench. So I was able to do it. Just so you know, don't freak out. 120 foot-pounds is a hell of a lot of force on it. Okay, especially when you're using extensions. I don't know, maybe they flex a little. So you really have to work hard to tighten it to 120 foot-pounds. So don't freak out, it's nothing unsafe. Okay, so back inside. Size 13 deep socket here. I already tightened these by hand. As you can see, 1, 2. Now they're sticking out because the strut is connected to the knuckle. So I simply put the socket here. It's really hard. We put a socket here onto the, there we go, onto the nut and tighten by hand, there you go. And the rest finish obviously with the I use the big ratchet and maybe an extension. Like that. Yep, just like that. Big ratchet and extension, okay? So we're tightening and okay, dzięki. Here are the leftover parts. So this is the right rear side, the one I showed you first. That was a broken shock absorber, and this was a broken spring on the left side. So there should be another piece somewhere in there. There's another piece there. And finally it's time to put back the speakers into position. Make sure the foam is put down. Speakers only go in one way, so no difficulty there. Now just make sure, if you have a bright interior or white interior like me, don't mess it up like that. I was trying to use a rag. Well, not on this one. See, when you try to access this little screw here, you're gonna mess up your interior. So look what I did here. I messed it up real bad when I was fighting with my struts. So just get your screws and put them back in nicely, and you should be in business. One of the few things in my videos which I can do with one hand. This probably doesn't help you guys that much anyway. No torque here that I care about, so there you go. Should be good. And finally, I'm gonna align the cover and done. So here's the finished product. Looks good, drives good. Roughly the same height with the new parts or replaced parts. feels good so far.